On last week's episode of the podcast, I talked about how exhausted I was from the National. And truth be told, I'm still pretty wore out. But there was a decent sized card show in my area last weekend, the Bay Area Card Show, and I still wanted to go to that. So, I guess that's a good sign. I'm not completely wore out. I knew I wouldn't be setting up at this one, though. I just wanted to cruise around and talk to people and look at cards. And that's exactly what I did. And it seems like every time I go to a show, people will message me and ask about the general vibe, if people were more interested in buying or trading and so on. So I'm just going to try and cover some of that right now. Before I get too far in, just realize I try to talk to some of the dealers to get their perspective on things. But at the end of the day, someone might go to the same exact show and have a completely different experience than me. I am just one collector. Okay, one collector. So first off, this show was packed. And there were spots on the floor that got kind of tight, or I had to wait a little bit to look at a table. Now, were all of those people buying? Well, that's hard to tell. I talked to a couple of dealers, and they claimed that a lot of people were poking around or trying to get things really cheap, but there wasn't a lot of actual buying going on. It was hard for me to get a good reading on the room. Sometimes this show has a second room in the back. This time everything was packed into one. I did see a few empty tables, and a couple of the bigger dealers didn't show up. I know we had the National a couple weeks ago. I think there was some sort of situation. I saw some drama on IG with somebody associated with this show. I don't know all the details. I haven't kept track of that, so I'm not going to weigh in. All of that is to say, though, there are so many factors and situations weighing on a show, and this show in particular, that it's hard to pick up on a general vibe. One thing I do know for sure, though, like I said earlier, this place was packed. It was hard to move around. So even if customers weren't buying, the interest level for cards is still there. Now, as far as what kind of stuff I saw there, it was a lot of the usual shiny stuff. Although there was still a variety. And when I say shiny, I don't always mean that in a negative sense. So I don't mean that negative here. The one thing that really surprised me was the sheer number of CSG slabs at the show. And I've talked about CSG before. I really like the direction the company's headed in. It took me a while to get used to the tall labels, but the slabs look really nice in hand. They're crystal clear, and if you turn the label in the light a little, you can see some sort of holographic security feature there. So that's pretty cool. But there were some tables that were just like a sea of CSG slabs, or some tables had whole boxes of just slab after slab, which, we've seen the same thing with PSA. So that's not uncommon. There's nothing wrong with that. But it was just staggering to see so much of them at one time and all of a sudden. So I figure I can take that to mean several things. Number one, people are ready for a quicker, cheaper alternative to the bigger companies. Or number two, it's a product of them being a Florida company and they're local. Truth be told, I think it's likely a combination of the two. And I didn't end up buying, any of those slabs. Although I'm not opposed to it, but I did find a few odds and ends that I was very happy to come home with.